According to all known laws of pollination, there is no way a pollinator should be able to pollinate. They are too insignificant to pollinate almost every crop globally. The pollinators, of course, pollinate anyway, because pollinators don't care what humans think is impossible. For hundreds of years, pollinators have been the driving force of America. They have supported our society and our food supply alike. But you'd be surprised just how often we choose to blatantly ignore these little creatures and all of the work that they do for us, simply because we don't like the way that they look. However, this cannot go on any longer, with new reports coming out stating that pollinator populations are on the decline. We must take action now. That's why I've decided to create this documentary to inform ordinary people like you and me just how we can contribute to this issue and help solve it in the future. To collect the data for this topic, I chose to conduct interviews with a beekeeper, Johnston, from R9 Hive of Honey in Harlingen. I also chose to speak to a representative from Crockett Farms in Harlingen. I was also able to speak to William McGhee from Harlingen Collegiate High School, who has a garden at home, who was able to tell me a little bit about his methods and processes that he conducts in his domestic garden instead of using pesticides. Then I turned to Arabella Ponce from Harlingen Collegiate High, who shared personal experiences with me about what she knows about pollinators and her personal food consumption. Using these anecdotes, I was able to collect this data to inform us about the future of our pollinators. Enjoy! What species comes to mind when you think of pollinators?
Bee, definitely a bee.
Bees.
Bee.
Probably a bee.
But did you know that
Pollinators come in the form of countless species. All sorts of insects, animals like squirrels, and even fish act as pollinators to countless plants nationwide.
in Pesticides and Pollinators, a Socioecological Synthesis, authors Sponsler and Grosinger confirm that there are almost 347,000 insect pollinators across the globe, a number that does not even include the amount of mammal pollinators who contribute to this cycle. But why care about pollinators?
Pollinators are the backbone of our nation. They do a lot of the heavy lifting on our farms, making sure our oranges are ripe and ready when they need to be. I think the same could be said for a lot of fruit, or should I say, food industries in the country.
From oranges to apples, pollinators act as major contributors to our food supply. The National Park Service agreed when they stated that pollinators are responsible for 1 out of 3 bites we take each day. At least 75% of flowering plants are pollinated by insects and animals, more than 1,200 food crops. With that knowledge in mind, imagine a world without me or my buddies. Would the world be able to sustain itself without us?
Like in the bee movie, I know there's this whole scene that without all the bees actually pollinating, everything was like dying. And that's basically what I would imagine. I pretty much think they had it pretty spot on what would happen, because even without just one creature, without one single thing in our ecosystem, a lot of things can go horribly in just like that.
Now, what if I told you that this concept isn't too far off from our current reality? The United States Fish and Wildlife Service confirms that for more than 25 years, many species of bees and other pollinators have experienced large drops in numbers.
I've witnessed these fluctuations firsthand. Over the past few years, we've gotten countless reports of underpopulated areas in Harlingen's wildlife parks that we believe stem from the relocation of blatant killing of pollinators like bees, wasps, rats, and even javelinas.
This issue is most represented by my very own population. In the 2019 documentary, The Pollinators, entomologist Samuel Ramsey states that between 30% to half of the colonies in the U.S. are dying every single year. So what's the root of the issue?
Well, this is where it gets complicated.
A lot of people will say that it's climate change.
I've always assumed pollution or dishoming.
I've always found a connection between these death rates and
Pesticides.
in our line of work, pesticides aren't entirely avoidable. Our farms do still need a certain amount of pesticides and animal traps to stop our products from being eaten or rotten by outside sources.
Based on my experiences, I can tell you right now that a lot of pesticide usage is domestic. Families use pesticides when gardening or to keep termites or other insects from getting inside. The most common pesticide I've seen used is definitely Roundup, which is a weed killer. But when it's placed on grass or near trees or weeds, pollinators have a large chance of being poisoned by them, even if they weren't in the direct target of the poison.
While you may be targeting what you believe to be harmful pests, you are actually endangering innocent pollinators who may ingest the poison or get caught in a trap unintentionally while searching for food. In Pesticides and Pollinators, a Socioecological Synthesis, Sponsler and Grosinger explained that pesticides can exert sublethal and lethal effects on individual pollinators, and that they tend to vary with exposure level, duration, and route of exposure, including ingestion, inhalation, and absorption. A world without pollinators like me isn't a sustainable one. But where does healing begin? Well, the answer is healing is going to be a long process, but there are many ways that we can all pitch in to make a difference.
Well, as a gardener myself, I try to make my flowers easy to access for them. I also like to have my yard to be a decent environment for them, even if I can only do so much. I think a better way to do so is to plant native plants. This does wonders for them in the long run and allows them to be comfortable in the environment that they're pollinating in.
Crockett Farms is trying to help curb the issue of pesticides by carefully managing the cycle in which we apply pesticides in comparison to the usual pollination cycles we observe. Additionally, we've been looking into new pesticides that use more natural ingredients to deter pests rather than potentially harm them.
To naturally deter pests, I tend to use chili powder and other natural sources like that won't physically hurt any of the animals, at least not for a long period, but will scare them off from coming back to my garden, especially if they're the type of pests that are eating away at any of my plants or are threatening the well-being of the plants instead of allowing them to be pollinated.
The University of Florida recommends a lot of natural resources that we can rely on to resist pests. For example, they recommend using essential oils like citronella, peppermint, and lavender to help fight off increasing populations of roaches, flies, or spiders that may be getting in the way of a healthy garden. Additionally, you can also recycle coffee grounds, which once they are cooled and melted to the ground, they can help resist slugs and snails that may slowly eat away at growing veggies. Additionally, we can also make our way by planting insect-repellent plants that will biologically resist insects and other animals. These plants include lavender, marigolds, citronella grass, catmint, rosemary, basil, mint, and sage.
I definitely think social media and all of our technological uses can impact and help the preservation of these pollinators just by spreading the word and just by creating these environments where we can protect these creatures and protect these insects. And I definitely think we can do our best and make an impact, because not only do we need them, but they also need us.
So whether you're looking at the smallest pollinator or the biggest, we can all rest assured that our pollinators and our food supply are supported, nourished, and are given the guidance, care, and love that we hold for them and all that they do for us. Because we can't enjoy the fruits of our labor until we appreciate the ones who worked the hardest to grow them.
Hashtag save the pollinators.
Hashtag save the pollinators.
Hashtag save the pollinators.
Hashtag save the pollinators.